This is NTD Evening News. Live from our NTD Global Headquarters in New York City, here is Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. President Biden pushing forward with a bid to cancel billions more in student debt. It comes as Vice President Kamala Harris secures an endorsement that carries weight in battleground states. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao brings us the update.
The administration is marching forward with its plan to cancel student debt for tens of millions of Americans. The Department of Education will be emailing about 25 million Americans in the coming days about what their options are for potential cancellation plans. And it's hoping to deliver that relief in the fall, possibly just weeks before the November election. Here's the White House today talking about who's eligible for that. Watch.
Major step to cancel student debt for approximately 30 million Americans when combined with the administration's prior actions, including those whose balances have grown due to runaway interest and those who have been repaying their loans for a very long time.
But Republican lawmakers are criticizing it as an election year push to buy votes. A group of GOP senators introduced a bill today to try to block that. Meanwhile, in other campaign news, President Biden today had lunch with Vice President Kamala Harris. The White House, while saying that they are trying to recalibrate after President Biden announced that he's dropping out of the race, he is still very much the president. And Vice President Kamala Harris today secured a key endorsement from United Auto Workers, a key union that could sway voters in key battleground states. And as Harris is preparing to speak tonight to a black sorority in Houston, Texas, former President Trump is also stepping up his outreach to black voters by speaking at the annual convention for black journalists. Here's a clip of that. Watch.
I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country. Coming from the border are millions and millions of people that happen to be taking black jobs.
The Black Journalist Organization says they're trying to invite Harris to speak at a fireside conversation later. And next week, Harris will be campaigning with her to-be-announced VP pick in battleground states. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
The Federal Reserve today kept its key interest rate unchanged. The federal funds rate impacts other interest rates, like what you pay on credit card balances or the rate you get on a car loan. Fed Chair Jerome Powell today saying that real progress has been made on inflation. He also acknowledged weakness in the jobs market and the economy. He says the broad sense among the Fed committee is that things may be deteriorating to a point where the economy will soon need stimulus. That could come as soon as September's Fed meeting in the form of a rate cut. The leader of the Hamas terrorist organization was killed in Iran this morning. Here to talk more about this with us is NTD National Security Correspondent and former counterintelligence agent Jason Perry. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. Now, to begin, can you tell us more about this Hamas leader who was killed?
Yes, sure. His name is Ismail Haniyeh, and you may have seen him on TV before because he was kind of the face for Hamas's international diplomacy. He was based in Qatar and had been taking a part in ceasefire negotiations for the Israel-Hamas war. Now, recently, he was in Iran and had just attended the swearing-in ceremony for Iran's new president. And hours later, he was killed by an airstrike in Iran's capital city. Now, Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, said this today after the strike.
In my speech to Congress a few days ago, I mentioned three main branches of this axis of evil: Hamas, Houthis, and Hezbollah, the three H's. In the last few days, we have dealt crushing blows to each of them.
Now, Israel did not claim responsibility for this specific strike, but Iran certainly thinks they're responsible, and they vowed retaliation.
Now, Israel did claim responsibility for the airstrike yesterday in the capital of Lebanon that reportedly killed Hezbollah's military commander. What do we know about him?
Well, his name is Fuad Shukr, and Israel said they believe he is responsible for the recent rocket attack in northern Israel that killed 12 children on a soccer field. Now, Shukr was also wanted by the United States, and they had a reward of up to $5 million for information on him. The U.S. said he played a key role in the 1983 bombing of the U.S. Marine Corps barracks in Beirut that killed 241 U.S. service members. And his death could be a heavy blow because he was Hezbollah leader's right-hand man.
Now, it seems likely that Hezbollah will want to retaliate as well. So is a war between Israel and Hezbollah inevitable?
Well, it certainly seems like things continue to heat up between the two. And many are just wondering now what Iran is going to do in response to this latest strike in their capital city. Now, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin spoke today about the situation in the Middle East. And he said he does not think a war between Israel and Hezbollah is inevitable. He said the U.S. is doing everything they can to keep things from turning into a broader conflict throughout the region. However, he said if Israel is attacked, then the United States will help Israel again, like they helped Israel in April when Iran sent hundreds of missiles and drones at Israel.
Jason, thank you for those updates.
Thanks for having me.
Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina is introducing legislation that would allow the president to use military force against Iran if it's determined Iran is using nuclear weapons.
If we do not change course, Iran will, in the coming weeks or months, possess a nuclear weapon. It is time to end the charade that the world is playing when it comes to Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. They're one and the same.
Earlier, we spoke with Khansarinia, Vice President of the National Union for Democracy in Iran, about the killing of the Hamas leader in Tehran. Khansarinia, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be with you.
Now, Hamas is saying that its political leader was killed by an Israeli strike in Tehran, Iran's capital. Now, the Israeli government has yet to take credit for this, but if it was Israel, what is the message here?
I think the message to the Islamic Republic is loudly and clearly that wherever you are, wherever your proxies are, even if they're in the heart of your capital, we can get you and we will get you. And I think that message was received very clearly in Tehran. Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, was killed in Tehran only hours after a private meeting in his secret compound, the Supreme Leader's secret compound, that is, and he was there attending the inauguration of the regime's new president. So I think that there's no doubt the message to Tehran was, we will find you and we will eliminate you, and we can also do it to other of your officials as well. I think it was not only the killing of Ismail Haniyeh that was important, it was the message that it was sending to Ali Khamenei, to Masoud Pezeshkian, and to the leaders of the Islamic Republic, that Israel has clearly penetrated very high levels of the regime in Tehran.
And in your view, is this deterrence or escalation?
I think it's clearly deterrence. I think it was such a blow to the Islamic Republic. Obviously, Ismail Haniyeh is not Iranian, but he is the leader of one of the Islamic Republic's most important proxies. Had he been killed anywhere, it would have been a blow to the regime. The fact that he was killed in Tehran on such an important day for the regime, just hours after seeing the supreme leader, makes it all that much more significant. And I think that as a result of this, it was such a significant blow that the regime will be forced to back down to it to some extent. I don't think that this will lead to a larger escalation or a full-out war between Iran and Israel, between the Islamic Republic and Israel. That is, I think it was a significant enough blow to restore deterrence and to make Ali Khamenei, the dictator of Iran, recognize that his actions or the actions of the proxies that he directly controls and finances have consequences.
And expanding on that, what is the relationship between Iran and Hamas?
Hamas is one of the three, the big three, if you will, Hamas, the Houthis, and Hezbollah. Now, it may not be the case that Ali Khamenei or the Islamic regime in Iran is involved in every single aspect of the day-to-day operations of these groups, but there's no major operation, no major action taken by Hamas, or for that matter, Hezbollah or the Houthis, without the Islamic Republic and Ali Khamenei's knowledge and sign-off. They are financed by the Islamic Republic. Hamas has been for years now financed to the tune of billions of dollars by the Islamic Republic. They are supported diplomatically, militarily, and in so many other manners. So it is an extremely close relationship. Proxy maybe even does a disservice to the relationship between Hamas and the regime in Iran. They work hand in glove in many instances, and Hamas is a way, just like Hezbollah and the Houthis are, for the Islamic Republic to bring about its mission of establishing an Islamic caliphate throughout the region without paying the consequences. So it gets those guys to do its dirty work, and they usually face the brunt of the repercussions, and the Islamic Republic usually is able to get away without much of a consequence. And we've seen that borne out by decade after decade of really weak and appeasing Western policy towards the regime in Iran.
Now, Iran has vowed revenge, but what can we expect to see from Iran?
In the past, the regime has vowed this very same type of revenge, and it's often been face-saving measures. They said that they were going to launch significant retaliation for the Israeli attack on the IRGC building in Syria. What we saw was a pre-announced, coordinated, almost facade of several dozen missiles, rockets, drones, barely any of which hit their targets. They were pre-announced. It really was a face-saving measure. I think it's possible we'll see more of the same. Alternatively, going forward, it could be some response that is not on the front page of the newspaper, but some things that the regime tries to do with secret operations. It could be attacks against Israeli or Jewish groups or institutions or individuals across the world. We know that the Islamic Republic is not only a geopolitical enemy of the Israeli government, but it actually is one of the lead proponent of anti-Semitism around the world. So it could take out its revenge on innocent Israelis or Jewish organizations across the world as well.
And given the tensions we are seeing in the region, whether that's in Gaza, Lebanon, even Turkey potentially weighing in, what steps do you see as needed to make sure this doesn't become a regional war?
There will be more regional chaos. There will be more murdered innocent civilians on all sides, Israeli, Arab, Iranian, Western, as long as the regime in Iran is still in power. The Islamic Republic has spent 45 years doing what it calls exporting the revolution. It seeks to undermine legitimate national governments in Arab countries around the world. We see right now the Islamic Republic trying to undermine the Saudi Arabian government, the Jordanian government, the Emirati government, so many others. It's effectively taking control of the Iraqi government over the past several years. So as long as this regime is in power, there is no real path to peace. There is no better deal to be had with the regime in Iran. The only solution really lies in supporting the people of Iran, who every day are facing the brunt of this evil and criminal regime and are fighting back against it. If they're successful in getting rid of Ali Khamenei, the puppet master of all this crime and terrorism, then there's a real chance, if not probability or guarantee of peace. Until that happens, I don't see a path to peace in the Middle East.
Cameron Khansarinia, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
3 suspects accused of plotting the 9/11 attacks have agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy charges. That's according to a letter between war court prosecutors and the victims' families. Prosecutors said the suspects are exchanging death penalty for a life sentence at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. They have been held in U.S. custody since 2003. Over a dozen protesters are dead and hundreds have been arrested in Venezuela. U.S. lawmakers are now urging President Biden to recognize Venezuela's opposition candidate as the legitimate winner of the recent election. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has more from South America.
Venezuela's socialist president Nicolas Maduro ordered military and police to patrol across the country starting Wednesday. Protests continue inside Venezuela as many claim the incumbent government committed election fraud to stay in power. A rights group says at least 16 people have been killed in the protests so far. Venezuelan authorities say nearly 750 people have been arrested. And Maduro now also wants opposition leaders to be arrested, blaming them for the protests against his leadership.
We have held back. We will uncover and capture them all, and we will be victorious, once again victorious.
The opposition says its candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, had more than twice as many votes as Maduro, based on 90% of vote tallies. This would mean the end of 25 years of socialist rule in Venezuela.
With these numbers, we will begin the reconstruction of Venezuela hand in hand with all of you.
International support for the opposition is now mounting. Peru says it recognizes Gonzalez as the actual president-elect. And now Argentina, Chile, Costa Rica and Uruguay say they don't recognize the results of the election. And Florida Senator Rick Scott is calling on Biden to do the same and recognize Gonzalez as the actual president-elect. Republican Senator John Hoeven told NTD he's in favor of Senator Scott's demands.
Yeah, Senator Scott's right. I mean, it's a sham election. It's ridiculous. Maduro doesn't hold free and open elections. It's ludicrous, and everybody knows it, and we should speak out against it.
The White House on Wednesday was asked if it recognizes Gonzalez as the actual president-elect.
We want to see the full tabulated data from the polling places. We want to see something that can be verifiable.
The State Department on Wednesday said its patience for Maduro is running out, citing new independent reports.
Venezuela's 2024 presidential election did not meet international standards of electoral integrity and cannot be considered democratic.
And Maduro on Wednesday afternoon said he's now ready to release the voting results. He's calling on the opposition to do the same. Reporting in Brazil, Arian Pastar, NTD News.
The Organization of American States, or OAS, held a meeting today to address the results of the Venezuelan election. NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on this story.
The governments of 11 countries in the region requested the OAS to have a special meeting of their permanent council here in Washington, D.C. to discuss the electoral process in Venezuela. The OAS is the multilateral regional body dedicated to human rights, electoral oversight, and economic and human development.
We want the authorities in Venezuela to publish the results with transparencies. We want to encourage the protection of all the opposition figures. We want the Venezuelan authorities to respect the institution of asylum. And also we want to see if the controversies continue, some independent organizations to make an auditing of the result of the Venezuelan elections.
It's important to note that in 2019, the OAS, the United States, and 50 other countries in the world moved to recognize the then opposition leader Juan Guaido as the legitimate president of Venezuela until 2023, when the Venezuelan opposition dissolved the interim government.
Well, the expectation that we have is that Edmundo Gonzalez should be recognized as the president-elected of Venezuela. This is something that is not imposed. It was the will of the vast majority of Venezuelans, to the point that Edmundo Gonzalez has achieved the biggest margin in a presidential election in the history of Venezuela.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Turning now to unrest in the UK, protesters clash with police in northwest England amid outrage over the killing of 3 young girls. So far, roughly 50 law enforcement officers were reportedly injured, and nearly 30 of them were sent to the hospital. The event traces back to a stabbing spree on Monday, where a 17-year-old suspect killed 3 children and injured 11 others at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class. The stabbing suspect is currently in custody, but police have yet to release any details about him. Officials said the outrage stems from allegations circulating that the suspect was an illegal immigrant. Footage showed police vehicles damaged and set alight as officers were pelted with bricks and large garbage containers. The violence took place as the town was holding a peaceful vigil, mourning the lives lost in the tragic event. The park fire in Northern California is growing at rapid speeds and bringing destruction to local communities. It is now the 5th largest wildfire in the state's history. According to CAL FIRE, the blaze has grown to more than 386,000 acres as of this morning. That's almost half the size of Rhode Island and larger than the entire city of Los Angeles. The fire is only 18% contained. The blaze forced Lassen Volcanic National Park to shut down. It's also destroyed over 270 structures so far. Evacuation orders for some communities were lifted, and local residents have to deal with the slow process of recovery. The man accused of starting the fire has been charged with reckless arson. His arraignment will continue tomorrow. With the rising cost of doing business this year, we've seen stores like 99 Cents Only and Rubio's Fish Grill shut down operations in California. The retailer Big Lots, which operates nearly 1,400 stores throughout the United States, is now the latest to shutter some California locations, citing economic challenges. NTD's Helen Billings reports.
Discount retail chain Big Lots is set to close 54 of its California stores following a reported net loss of $205 million in the first fiscal quarter of this year.
Additionally, the store locator on the retailer's website shows that 89 more locations in 27 other states are set to close. In its June SEC filing, the Columbus, Ohio headquartered company stated that the macroeconomic challenges in the U.S. economy, such as elevated inflation, has adversely impacted the buying power of its customers. The filing also said that net losses started in 2022, and they've been using cash for operations since then, which raised doubts about their ability to continue. NTD talked to Elizabeth Conley from Concord, California, a frequent shopper at Big Lots and the 99-cent store that recently closed. She gave her take on the situation.
Because there's so many basic, simple things that we need, that just cost a few dollars. We don't need to go all the way to Walmart, which is quite a distance away, or Target, and bring along lists and all that. We need to be able to come close to our home and have a 99-cent store, have a Big Lots store, pick up some towels or some bowls at a reasonable price. This driving around thing, I feel like someone needs to start some new businesses because they're going out.
In a press release, Big Lots CEO Bruce Thorne said that the company had missed its sales target, largely due to continued pullback in consumer spending, particularly on high-ticket items. He added that their current financial performance does not reflect their stronger business model and has plans to turn things around by later this year.
I do wonder about why this is happening, and I think it's very unfortunate in California because California is the wealthiest state. Well, what's going on? Why can't we hold ourselves together and have these decent stores?
I visited the Concord, California location to confirm the closure, where I saw a large closing sign across the front entrance, along with signs offering discounts up to 20% off. In California, Helen Billings, NTD News.
10 years ago, Mississippi's elementary students ranked near the bottom in literacy. Today, the state has soared to the 21st spot in the nation. NTD's Dana Monahan speaks with the Mississippi Department of Education Literacy's director about how the state achieved those results.
Mississippi ranked 49th in the United States for elementary school literacy 10 years ago. Fourth graders were essentially an entire grade level behind the rest of the nation. In 2023, 85% of third graders passed the state reading test, thanks to a shift from balanced literacy to the science of reading approach. In balanced literacy, students are taught to use cues to guess words and then memorize them. The science of reading approach uses phonics, so students understand how words look and sound as they acquire vocabulary.
The systems of language is explicit, it's systematic. There's a scope and sequence of foundational skills that have to be taught to students that go from very easy skills to more complex skills. So it's really but that really direct type of reading instruction where we're not playing a guessing game.
Mississippi Department of Education Literacy Director Kristen Wells-Wynn says they created key strategies and an early literacy policy that was very detailed to implement the changes.
We had to go back and retrain all of our teachers. We had to go back and retrain all of our leaders, retrain all of our IHL professors. And so we opened up professional development grounded in the science of reading at all stakeholder levels. And so we offered that free to all educators from the state level.
They also put coaching support in place to help classroom teachers take those practices and implement them in their classrooms. Parents got involved as well.
We started training our parents, really having those family nights with parents. We had individual reading plans that we gave students that are part of our law. So those were some, the key things that really helped drive change for us in Mississippi.
Some districts initially resisted the changes, not letting teachers and leaders to even participate in the professional training.
But what happened was when that first set of kindergarten readiness data started to be publicized, and now you start seeing districts who historically their students have not, necessarily performed well, outperform districts. Then, now that there's their question is, what's happening? Maybe we've been doing this not the right way. Maybe we've been doing it, the wrong way.
Carrie M. Wright led the changes as Mississippi's Superintendent of Education. She took over as the head of Maryland's Department of Education in early July. Her first order of business will be to oversee the same transition of reading instruction in Maryland. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Vice President Kamala Harris is set to hold her first rally with her running mate next week in Philadelphia. Two guests join us to explore Harris's potential pick for vice president. Amber Duke is the Washington editor for The Spectator, and Stevo Institute fellow Theron Bond is a Democratic strategist. Thank you both so much for joining us. Great to see you both again. Amber, I want to start with you. Harris is expected to hold her first rally with her VP pick next Tuesday in Philly. Now, she said she hasn't decided who that is yet. At the top of that list is Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, among others. What do you make of this short list?
Yes, well, it looks like Kamala Harris is trying to pick someone who's a little bit more of a centrist within the Democratic Party in an attempt to shield herself from the fact that she was one of the most liberal senators when she did serve in the U.S. Senate. And as recently as 2020, when she was running for the Democratic nomination, said that she supported a lot of issues that frankly are very unpopular for most Americans, such as decriminalizing illegal immigration, banning fracking, demolishing ICE, allowing free health care and public education for illegal aliens. And she also has to contend with an unpopular record on immigration as a member of the Biden administration and someone who was tasked with tackling immigration from Northern Triangle countries. So picking someone like Mark Kelly, who has a tougher record on immigration, could be beneficial to her. Picking someone like Josh Shapiro, who has a more conservative record on energy, could be useful to her in other ways. I think it would be surprising if she holds this first rally in Pennsylvania and doesn't have the Pennsylvania governor there as her running mate, although perhaps he will be there to give his blessing to whoever it is that she does choose.
And Theron, what would each of these potential picks bring to the Harris ticket? Whom does Harris need to reach the moderates, the independents?
I think if she chooses Senator Mark Kelly, she's going to bring in some Democrats. She's going to bring in some independents. She's going to bring in some young voters who get excited about an astronaut being on the ticket. But she has to worry about his stances on labor. As with Governor Josh Shapiro, he's pretty moderate. While he's had some progressive issues that he stood on, he would also be kind of a safe establishment pick. His stances on the war and his previous stances on vouchers are what could hurt him with more progressive voters.
And Amber, when it comes to this election, undecided female voters are a massive block. What does each candidate need to do to win that vote?
Well, I think it's interesting. You know, there's been a lot of talk over the vice president pick with Donald Trump, J.D. Vance's comments about unmarried, childless women. And I think for a Republican Party perspective, their messaging should be focused on the fact that they are a pro-family party. They have historically done really well among married women with children, as well as among both married and unmarried men. So for them to try to win over that cohort of unmarried women right now, I don't think is the best strategy. I think it makes more sense for them to talk about how their policies are going to help working people, especially working families, and make sure that those people are actually motivated to get out to the polls in November. This is about a war of attrition, not of necessarily rebuilding a new coalition this late in the game.
And Theron, what tactics do you see each side employing to win over these voters?
So where this election is going to be decided this year is going to be with independent voters and single issue based voters. Whichever candidate speaks best to the issue that matters most to an individual person, that's who they're going to vote for. If it's education and one of the candidates has a stronger stance on education, that's who they're going to vote for. If it's immigration, that's who they're going to vote for. If it's women's rights, reproductive rights, choice, that's who they're going to vote for. If we look at the Democratic side, more of those choices, or there are better options on that side. And so people will more likely vote that way if they're independent. But honestly, these folks have got to win over people outside of their respective bases. If not, each side is equally in trouble and has a steep hill to climb.
And Amber, right now we're seeing both sides ramp up on name calling and insults. This certainly makes headlines. But what is the most productive way for the candidates to help voters make up their minds come November?
Well, of course, everyone wants to talk about the policy issues that are on their platform and how those apply to everyday Americans And right now, the Republicans are winning on those issues. When you look at who voters trust more to tackle top 5 issues, including the economy, immigration, democracy, with the exception of abortion, which the Democrats outrun Trump by about 5 to 6 percentage points on, Trump has the voters in his pocket on those issues. He basically just has to convince them at this point that he will actually do what he says when he gets into office a second time, and that he's capable of being presidential, which is a good reason, of course, to tamp down on some of the name calling or some of the allegedly nasty things that he might say about opponents. And then on the Democratic side, I think they have to do the same thing. They have to explain, especially Kamala Harris, as the media has done some revisionist history on her past stances. She has to explain, was she being dishonest then, or is she being dishonest now on where she actually stands on these issues? And if not, if she's telling the truth that she's really had some kind of political conversion, then I think she owes it to the voters to explain why exactly that has happened, instead of doubling down on this narrative that her opponents in this race are weird or bizarre.
And Theron, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know that I would call anything about former President Donald Trump's behavior presidential. In fact, it's quite reprehensible. I think what we see on the Republican side is their messaging is pretty tight and they're running it into the ground, and they're doing that well. Democrats are struggling to figure out just which policies they're going to push and highlight for the American people. If they, in fact, as Democrats can do that, then we'll win in November. But former President Donald Trump, he talks real big, he slings a lot of mud, but can he sling policy knowledge? Probably not as well as Democrats can be when the time comes to vote in November.
Amber Duke, Theron Bond, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Arizona Republican Kari Lake is projected to win her Senate primary, according to the Associated Press. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that and other results from the Arizona contests.
The former news anchor will face off in November against Democratic Representative Ruben Gallego for the seat being vacated by Independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema.
I am the proud son of immigrants, and I am running to be the first Latino senator for all of Arizonans, our hardworking Arizonans.
Lake defeated 2 primary opponents to secure the Republican nomination.
Arizona, I stand before you today to officially accept your nomination as the Republican candidate for the United States Senate.
The former gubernatorial candidate emphasized what she sees as the urgency of the election.
We have watched what has happened over the last 3.5 years, and frankly, we only have 3.5 months to save this country.
In other races, Trump-backed Congressman Eli Crane faced off against Kevin McCarthy-backed Jack Smith in District 2. Crane put in a dominant performance to win handily, leading Smith 79% to 21%, with about 94% of the votes counted. In a battle between 2 Trump-backed candidates in the 8th District, Abraham Hamadeh was leading Blake Masters by about 4.5%, with about 92% of the votes counted. In a contest for Maricopa County Recorder, Justin Heap was leading Stephen Richer by about 2%. Richer is running for a second term as county recorder. The Republican has faced criticism from within his own party for dispelling allegations of election fraud in Arizona. On the Democrat side, 3 people were battling for the nomination to fill Ruben Gallego's seat in Congress. Former Phoenix City Council member Yasamin Ansari was leading Raquel Tehran Tuesday night by about 4%. Tehran served in the Arizona legislature and as chair of the Arizona Democratic Party. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, a lot going on today, especially in the Olympics. So let's start right there as U.S. swimmer Katie Ledecky won gold in the 1500-meter freestyle event. What does this latest win rank her all time?
I mean, first, basically, she's now most medals by a female swimmer all time with 12. That ties her with 3 other swimmers. It's her 7th gold as well. This race really wasn't that close either. She had a lead after the first lap, never really looked back, won by 10 seconds. That's almost half the length of the pool, and she set an Olympic record in the process. Now, this is no surprise, really. I mean, she dominated the preliminaries too. Her winning this event was about as sure of a gold as the U.S. had coming to these games, and she did not disappoint. Now, elsewhere, the U.S. women's soccer team defeated Australia 2-1 to win their group. Trinity Rodman and Corbin Albert both scored for the U.S., which won all 3 games there. They'll advance to the quarterfinals to play Japan. The U.S. men's basketball team won as well. They beat South Sudan by 17 points. And actually, 10 days ago, they barely beat South Sudan in an exhibition, took a LeBron James layup at the buzzer, and South Sudan was 43-point underdogs in that game. So a better result today. The U.S. will now play Puerto Rico on Saturday.
Now, yesterday, the Canadian women's Olympic soccer team was penalized 6 points by the International Olympic Committee for their drones buying scandal. But after losing their appeal today, will they still be able to advance to the quarterfinals?
I mean, amazingly, yes. They beat Colombia 1-0 today. That'll give them just enough points to advance. Now, you get 3 points for each win in these group stage. So essentially, the IOC docked them for 2 wins, 6 points that they already had. Those 2 wins were against New Zealand and France. But this is a good team. I mean, they've won all 3 games in the group stage. They are the defending Olympic champions. Now, to review what happened a bit, this story kind of blew up last week after New Zealand's team accused them of using a drone to spy on their practice. After a review by Team Canada, they suspended their coach, and then the Canadian Olympic Committee ended up removing her, excuse me. Now, I must say, this is the quickest I've ever seen the IOC and the CAS, the Court of Arbitration for the Sport, ever act on something. I mean, they came up with a penalty, heard an appeal, and then issued a ruling on it all within a week. Now, meanwhile, the Kamila Valieva Russian figure skating scandal has been 2.5 years, and we still don't have a resolution on that. So at least what this one is much done quicker.
Shifting gears to baseball news, the Baltimore Orioles recalled top prospect infielder Jackson Holliday today after he struggled earlier in the season. Now, a natural shortstop, where does he fit in defensively?
It looks like he's going to play second base. Now, Baltimore, they are loaded with young stars, especially on their infield. They already have all-star Gunnar Henderson at shortstop, but they just traded away rookie second baseman Connor Norby to Miami. So there's a spot open there that's available. And that's what Holliday played today against Toronto in their win. Now, Holliday struggled when they brought him up earlier in the season. Of course, he's only 20 years old, so that's not that surprising. But today, in his return, he had a grand slam in his first game back. That's his first home run as a major leaguer, too. Now, in the minors, I mean, the guy really had no weaknesses. Hit for average, hit for power, had as many walks as strikeouts, and he's a good fielder. So maybe today's hit gets him going.
Circling back to the Olympics, what are some events to look for tomorrow, and where are we in the medal tracker?
Well, right now, the U.S. leads in total medals with 30. They lead in silvers and bronze, but they do not lead in gold medals won. That's China with 9. The U.S. right now has 5. Now, tomorrow we get more of Simone Biles in the U.S. gymnastics team. This time it's the individual all-around event. Now, Biles won this in 2016. She's certainly among the favorites again this time around. That'll start at 12:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In swimming, we got 4 finals events, including the men's 200-meter breaststroke. Now, American Ryan Murphy won this event in 2016 as well. He's expected to compete for the title here. Now, that's going to start at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we also have women's basketball tomorrow as the U.S. takes on Belgium. That'll be at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So plenty more going on tomorrow.
Well, Davis, always, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.
A full-time scientist, part-time basketball player is chasing after 3-on-3 gold in Paris. He's also the son of an NBA legend.
Canyon Barry is a part-time basketball player. His full-time job is system engineer for a defense and space contractor. Barry, who will take the courts at the Paris Games searching for a 3x3 gold medal for the U.S. men's team, has an undergraduate degree in physics and a master's degree in nuclear engineering.
Scientist, engineer, problem solver, take your pick.
When not with teammates preparing for the Olympics, the son of Hall of Famer and NBA champion Rick Barry is often on his laptop working on projects for his job. During his preparations for the Paris Games, Barry was still taking Zoom calls and doing his day job in the middle of the night while the rest of the team was sleeping. But the 30-year-old Barry is on vacation during the Olympics to devote his full attention to the chase for gold. While Barry's teammates appreciate his intellect and attention to detail on court, there are times when they tire of him correcting them off it.
I've had some smart teammates before, but you know, he's always correcting us on stuff, and that's never fun, right? He's always trying to be like, no, this is how you say it, or this is the right way to do it, or this is the, you know. So he's always making sure that we're on our P's and Q's. But just an unbelievable guy. Obviously, super intelligent, super smart, and you can see it when he plays on the court. He has a similar, you know, thinking aspect of how he likes to play the game.
Oh, you know, I like to poke at my teammates every now and then, just as a little running joke. We have the order of operations of always say yourself last in a sentence for grammatical purposes. So I like to drive them crazy with that one a little bit, but you know, it's all in good fun. Like Jimmer said, we're so tight. We're all like brothers, and to be able to experience this Olympic moment with what I consider my family makes it that much more special.
When Berry returns to his full-time job in Melbourne, Florida after the Paris Games, he hopes to bring home a gold medal.